Hello, my friends, and welcome back to yet another episode of Watching the Watchers Live. My name is Robert Govea. I am a criminal defense attorney at the R&R Law Group located in the always beautiful and sunny Scottsdale, Arizona. And today, my friends, we are talking about a lot of business. We're starting off with the word of the day, which is mutiny, because there seems to be a lot of that taking place all across the fruited plain of America. We've got 4 segments that we're going to dive into today. We're going to start off with some Arizona updates because we still have a race here that was not called. Of course, we're looking at her. Arizona gubernatorial candidate, Kari Lake, is in the thick of it right now. I mean, we are talking about like 20,000 votes separate her from a victory over Katie Hobbs, one of the most boring, bland candidates that has ever happened. Has ever been in existence. And yeah, we have one of these super chats who just came in. Shout out to Ronnie Cole. Speaking of this topic, said, I heard Maricopa lost count and they're going to start over. Is that true? That hasn't been confirmed. You know, we have to be careful here. That hasn't been confirmed, but they might as well, for crying out loud, you know, because it's taking forever. We're going to get into that, Ronnie. Thanks for the support here. But hilarious because they are apparently still counting. You can see this gentleman on the screen here. His name is Bill Gates, Mr. Onesie Twosie. And some interesting stuff's going on here because he said that all of this was going to get done quickly. And then he acknowledges that he's sort of moving the goalposts on the timing. But then he says that nothing's out of the ordinary taking place. He says, I don't know where the ballots came from, but everything's perfect. But there's some interesting things going on because his compatriot, this guy, Stephen Richer, evidently was involved in creating this Arizona PAC, which is a political action committee that was launched to stop people who questioned prior elections. It's called the Pro-Democracy GOP. Of course, we're going to talk all about that here today. Before we jump into everything, of course, if you are out there, if you are in Arizona right now, you can go to karilake.com/cure and see if your ballot is submitted, right? Whether it's been submitted, whether it's been counted. I checked my ballot. It has been counted. You can see here, I went and voted on election day. It says you voted on election day. Your ballot was counted. And so I went to karilake.com/cure. And so if you're in Arizona and you have questions about whether your ballot was counted or not, certainly go over there. But that is what we're going to dive into in the first segment. In the next segment, man, there's a ton of Trump news today, and it's sort of hard to sort of pick where we want to start, but we're going to spend our time today talking about the January 6th Select Committee. We spent a ton of time on that here, and Donald Trump filed a lawsuit against them, and so there's just a ton there. There's a 41-page filing that he submitted out of the Florida District Court that's going over to the January 6th Committee. They sent a subpoena to him. We're going to refresh our recollection and remember sort of what that looked like. But then there's rumors now from this guy, Jaime Raskin. I was going to call him Adam. I can't keep track of all of them. But he is saying that Trump is going to be potentially Speaker of the House or something. And really, I think what's happening here is the Democrats are trying to create this gigantic wedge between all conservatives, all Republicans. They're trying to clobber both sides and instigate this civil war. And Raskin is still, you know, he's out there doing it. So we'll check in with him. We've got a big announcement from Trump tomorrow that is, going to be interesting. We're all speculating that he's going to be making his formal announcement. We have a representative, Rep. Stefanik, who is, I believe, the GOP chair, is saying that she endorses him. Donald Trump is trying to sort of consolidate a lot of the endorsements before other people jump in. So we'll get updates on that. We've got a segment from Friday that is pretty interesting. And there was another ruling today. So Joe Biden is sort of 0 for 2 on this. The student loans was found unconstitutional from a court in Texas. We're going to read through the opinion on that one. And I think it's 26 pages, 27, I think here. Let's take a look. Yeah, that's a 26 pager. So that's going to be fun. We'll get to that. We got the White House reaction, and, you know, all of these young students or old students, you know, whoever was intending to get this money, they're all on hold now. So right after the election, everything goes on hold. They get the promise all the way up to the election. Then right afterwards, oh man, you're not going to get your money. And you see how that works. Isn't that fun? In our final segment, we're going to talk about the GOP, the Republicans sort of plotting a mutiny on Mitch McConnell. We'll see. You know, they generally fall into line on this stuff. But the Senate, since the GOP has lost the Senate now in their colossal failure. They have to decide who's going to be the minority leader still. We've had several years of Mitch McConnell, many, many years of Mitch McConnell. There are questions about whether the current Republican senators want that to continue. In particular, we're going to check in with Senator Rubio, Josh Hawley. We know that they spent almost no money in the state of Arizona, which is why Blake Masters, partly got blown out here. And we'll check in with the Democrats because Chuck Schumer is saying, hey, I was really concerned about democracy, but now that we won, seems like everything's perfect now. Everything's back in perfect order. Since we won, I'm no longer worried about democracy. We've got updates from Nancy Pelosi. She's still very upset that her husband was attacked with a hammer. We still don't know much about that other than I guess hope he's okay, which is good. But she was asked about whether this could have been contributory to the Democratic success. And she says, oh, yeah, obviously it was. I think it was. And we've got Governor Kathy Hochul, who won again in New York. Those people in New York are very interesting. They keep voting for this stuff, but they did. And she's out there without a mask, dancing around in front of the kids while all the kids are masked up. It's sort of like a hearkening back to COVID era. But that's still going on. And so, as you can see, my friends, there is just a lot to get to. We have a lot of business here. And so if you want to be a part of the show, the best place to be and join is over at watchingthewatchers.locals.com. We have an amazing community over there. Shout outs to Uncle Shane, JC the Music Man, Matt's mom is in the house, Jason on Blast, C. Reed's over there, Paul Mino, our meme smith. Abani Speck is there. Shout out to GDL, MAL. We've got a bunch of lurkers in there too. They don't like to get called out, but that's just too bad. We'll call them out right now. Hey, what's up, Mr. Mez? What's up, Tell It Straight? What's up, Charles? What's up, Savdi? What's up, Navy? Many others out there, all over at watchingthewatchers.locals.com. And so if you want to join up over there, amazing community. We post all sorts of other stuff, including morning walk and talks, although today's was public. That one was made available for everybody. But now, my friends, it is time to get this puppy queued up so we can get right into the meat and potatoes of the program today. And let's do it, shall we? Very interesting things happening here in Arizona. We have our chairman who says that nothing out of the ordinary is taking place. You see this gentleman, Bill Gates, not that Bill Gates. This guy is sort of known as the onesie-twosie Bill Gates here in Arizona because that's how he refers to our political process here. We just got some onesies and twosie things to kind of button up, and then you'll get the results when we're good and ready and not a moment sooner. And so he's out there saying, none of this stuff is really out of the ordinary. We're just counting votes, onesie, twosie, threesie, foursie, doesn't matter. It's all coming in and everything is normal. But when we look around and take a look at some of these other clips, there's some interesting things going on. And I want to be careful here. I'm not implying that there's any sort of theft or S words or F words or any of the words that we got to be careful with here because we don't even have results yet. There's not even an outcome yet. But we do have questions about the process. We have questions about the law. We have questions about whether this is what we want to see as Arizonans, as Americans, as the incompetent sort of processing of these votes drags on and on and on and leaves many people throughout America wondering what the heck is going on over there. So we're going to check in with him. There's also this new report or this new tweet that was uncovered from the county recorder. His name is Stephen Richer. Evidently, he was supporting this pro-democracy GOP PAC, which is a political action committee. And a lot of people are asking questions about whether there is a conflict of interest. So we've got several clips from Mr. Bill Gates. He's also responding to Kari Lake. And this is kind of getting adversarial at this point. He's sort of pushing back and he's saying she is out of line and she doesn't deserve credibility. This is the county supervisor, Bill Gates, who is telling us that everything in Arizona is perfectly normal. There's nothing strange here. This is just the law. And it's going to take some time to count the votes, and you're just going to have to deal with it.
So, we have laws that allow people 5 business days to cure either a signature or their ID. If they don't have ID, they can vote a conditional provisional ballot. They have 5 business days to come and present the identification. So that, for us, that takes us through Wednesday, right? Wednesday of next week. So again, this is very common. I know people are very anxious to get the results, but there's nothing out of the ordinary here. And the reason that, again, we love having you guys all here, the reason you're here is because these races are so close.
So
Perfectly normal, not much to even scoff at. I mean, it's just the process. And it's Bill Gates communicating that this is just how things are done in Arizona. But it's interesting because some people have noticed a couple things that are out of the ordinary. In fact, some people are calling attention to this tweet. Let's pull this one up. Saw that. Oh, whoa. That doesn't exist. Oh, my goodness. Let me make sure I copied and pasted this right before I freak out on myself here, because I might have that might just be a bad link. So hold on a minute. Let's see here. Stephen Richer status. I wonder if that tweet was deleted. Very curious. I'm not going to be able to find it here in real time, I'm sure of it. But this was what the screenshot looked like. If you're over there on locals, could you do me a solid and see if you could find this tweet? I might have just copy and pasted the link wrong, but this is what I took a screenshot of earlier. And I'm going to be very curious if he deleted this puppy or not. I took a screenshot. I don't know if he deleted it or not yet, or I could have just copied and pasted it wrong. I don't know if it's deleted. I don't want to jump the gun on this. But this is the screenshot that I took earlier today. Here's what it said. Stephen Richer is retweeting, quote tweeting, a post from Meg Cunningham. You see, Meg Cunningham posted this November 17th, 2021, saying this, news. Oh my goodness. Stephen Richer, the Maricopa County Recorder, is launching a PAC, Political Action Committee, to support ours running for non-federal Arizona offices who, quote, acknowledge the validity of the 2020 election and condemn the events of J6 as a terrible result of the lies told about the November election. Wow, Meg Cunningham, she's a reporter. She's posting all about this. She posted that on November 17th, 2021. Yeah, interesting. Now, what you'll notice is this individual, Stephen Richer, Maricopa County Recorder, on his personal account, mind you, quote, tweeted this and said, thanks to a few generous donors, this is now launching. Join me, says Stephen Richer. This guy's in charge right now, by the way. Let's take a look at who he is in particular. All right, we're going to go over to Stephen Richer. And if we're here, you see him. Stephen Richer, Maricopa County Recorder. This is his personal account. Guy loves Diet Coke, sports, hip hop, fantasy books, classic fiction, business, cookies, management, strategy games, shout out, word games, bread, cats, writing, wife, and family. Well, that's good. Wife and family there, sort of there, bringing up the rear. Okay. So a lot there. Now, he is evidently a conservative person. He says, my letter of sorts to my beloved GOP party on the audit that was taking place, right? He's got a statement and he has been at the forefront. We've watched him many times give us updates from the podium. Okay, this is him. Stephen Richer, Maricopa County Recorder. Now, very curious on this account. Let's see. Let's see if I can find that tweet. Do we get a confirmation whether that tweet has been... Let's see here. I don't know if it was deleted or not, my friends, but we are going, let me show you what the rest of it says, because this is good stuff. Here, it says, thanks to a few generous donors, this is now launching. Join me if you care about traditional Republican stuff. Free people, love it. Free markets, love that. Rule of law, love that also. But he says, but also don't believe in conspiracies about the 2020 election or that January 6th was a tourist event. No, I don't think it was a tourist event. I don't think that a lot of people have been saying. I mean, we've been joking about that. It's been a joke, but it's also not the insurrection of America. Okay, so it's not like a bunch of lawn chairs blew over. Got that. And it's also not like America was insurrected and almost seized. Okay, it wasn't that either, weirdos. So how about we just come in the middle and we just sort of, have a rational conversation about it. But that's all beside the point. This is the Maricopa County Recorder, and he is publishing on his Twitter account links to pro-democracy GOP. My goodness, what is the pro-democracy GOP? He says that if you believe in, Republican stuff like I do, and you don't believe in those conspiracies, like people like, I don't know, Kari Lake does, people like Blake Masters does, people like Abe or Mark, any of these other individuals, right? They're the conspiracy theorists. They're the bad GOPers. They're the bad Republicans. Join the good Republicans. all you have to do is click right on over to prodemocracygop.com. Now let's take a look at that, because there's a whole website over there that is very bare, and this is what it looks like. So let's see if we can turn off the dark mode. This is the Pro-Democracy Republicans PAC, started, or supported at least, by Maricopa County Recorder Stephen Richer. That's interesting. The same guy who's working on elections in Arizona, counting the votes. Here's what he started after January 6th in 2021. He said, the pro-democracy Republicans, and we've heard this phrase all over the stinking place, I'm getting tired of it, saving our democracy everywhere we turn, fighting to keep our democratic institutions alive. Beautiful, beautiful thought, beautiful, meaningless phrase. Join the movement, give us your email address, and if you want to join, it's very easy. What do you get? Access to their newsletter, where they say our democratic institutions are long-lasting and peaceful transitions of power are the hallmark of the United States. We should not abandon this history in favor of conspiracy theorists, and I wonder who he called, would he call Kari Lake that? Yes, obviously. And demagogues. They write, the Arizona election wasn't stolen. We Republicans simply had a presidential candidate who lost, is what they said. While we had other candidates who won, many of them, it's time we Republicans accept and acknowledge this. Candidates come, candidates go, but our democratic institutions are long-lasting and peaceful transitions of power are the hallmark of the United States. We should not abandon this history in favor of conspiracy theorists or demagoguery. To that end, we are launching this PAC to support pro-democracy Arizona Republicans. This is the county attorney, this is the county recorder who counts the votes. Says, we hope you will join us. We will win some races, we will lose some races, but either way, we're going to be strengthening the processes that have long undergirded Arizona and the United States. That's very interesting. So we have this entire PAC created by Stephen Richer, who posted this back on November 17, 2021. Thanks for joining me to go after those conspiracy theorists. Now, many of those conspiracy theorists would be people that I guess he would call Kari Lake supporters, those conspiracy theorists. He would call anybody who supported Trump or who had questions about anything conspiracy theorists and tourist events. People calling J6 a tourist event. Now, that's interesting because there's a little bit of a conflict of interest there, right? Wouldn't it be curious? And shout out to Maddie Williams in the house, who gave us an update on this, who said the following: Richer deleted the tweet. Very, very interesting. I thought he did. And thank you to Maddie Adams for confirming that for us. It's hard to do a search and find some of that stuff in real time, but he did. Very curious. Yeah, because it is a conflict of interest. Now, just because that exists doesn't mean that there is some nefarious activity there, but it's very curious, right? You can see what the political disposition of this person is and what he feels about people like Kari Lake and others. And so we are going to get to more from Bill Gates. Of course, this guy says that everything's perfectly ordinary, everything's perfectly normal, but at the same time, I don't really have any idea where these ballots came from. We've got several more clips from him, including Bill Gates responding to Kari Lake, saying that she's basically inappropriate. He's sort of giving her the old attack. But first, my friends, we've got to check in with our sponsor, our friends over at Goldco. If you have a 401k or a savings account, things are very scary out there. The Biden administration has already printed more money in the past 2 years than the previous 100 years combined. The national debt hit around $30 trillion. Inflation is the highest we've seen since 1982. It's only a matter of time since the House of Cards comes crashing down. If you have retirement and savings, your money could be at serious risk. And so I'd invite you to talk to my friends over at Goldco. See how you can protect your retirement in gold and silver before it's too late. Go to the link on your screen, robertlikesgold.com. They'll give you $10,000 or more in free silver when you open up a qualifying account. That's over at robertlikesgold.com. They are rated by the Better Business Bureau with an A+ rating, and they're an amazing sponsor and friend of the show. So thank you for supporting my friends at Goldco. Go to robertlikesgold.com to see how they can help you. All right, my friends. And so we've got updates from Bill Gates, and he's got several different clips for us where he is confirming that he's got no idea where any of these ballots came from. And so I want to play this clip for you here. This is Bill Gates. A lot of people have questions about the counting. What's taking so long? And what is left outstanding? Do you have other ballots left? And can you tell us where they came from?
1,000 of these that are actually election day votes in person. And then the rest of the 75,000 are late earlies dropped off on election day. We do not know where these are from. These could be from anywhere in the county, all 75,000. This is not picked out of a certain area. These are not pulled by precinct.
And so then just give us the remaining universe and when we should expect those.
Can you tell us the final end date?
Yes. So we're now left with about 275,000 ballots to count, and the lion's share, the overwhelming majority of these remaining votes are early ballots that were dropped off on election day.
Okay, so you can see where part of the question comes in. If they dropped off a bunch of ballots on election day, and in Arizona, you can sort of drop off your ballot anywhere. You don't have to drop it to a certain location. You can see why they might think that some of the ballots are sort of from one precinct dropped off in another precinct. Let's say, for example, somebody lives in the West Valley. They work on the East Side. They travel from the West Valley with their early ballot. They go work in the East Valley and the East Side and then drop their ballot off over at a tabulation center near that location. So he's saying, well, we don't really know where they came from or what happened, but it's a big question, right? You know, it's where did these ballots come from and who's putting what where? It seems like a lot of people have questions about how that can happen.
And when do you think we'll get the results from those remaining uncounted ballots?
We will continue in the rhythm that we've now established over the past few days. I would anticipate, again, one ballot drop or, one vote update per day in the evening, probably somewhere in this range that we've been somewhere around 60 to 80,000 a day, which would then make us reach completion very early next week.
Very early next
week, and we still don't really have much of an answer on sort of what that means or when we're going to get answers. Now, there are people who are saying, or sort of speculating, that today is going to be the final drop that's really going to matter. And so we'll check back in around 6 o'clock and see if that hits. There was another tweet from Victor. People are asking, where are all the votes coming from? Why is Katie Hobbs? Why did Mark Kelly? How did they win? Here's an update from this individual. On November 11th, they said Maricopa County just released 75,000 new mail-in ballots. Mark Kelly now leads by nearly 115,000, while Katie Hobbs leads by nearly 27,000. Now, here, all of that's sort of old news. Here's the breakdown, though. This is where the issue is. 62% of young people voted Democrat in the early mail, larger than any other age group. That's here in Arizona. So all of the youth are voting for the Democrats. Not a big surprise, but it's probably a trend you're seeing elsewhere. But that is probably a little unexpected here for Arizona, those massive differences. Now, we've seen some clips from Kari Lake. Let's take a look at this story. Okay, so Kari Lake, of course, we've listened to a lot of her out there in the media explaining that she thinks she's going to continue to win and that she feels confident about her victory here. This is County Supervisor Bill Gates. Bill Gates, the county supervisor for Maricopa County, is being a little aggressive with Kari Lake, saying that he disagrees with her opinion about how this election is being conducted.
Well, Wolf, thanks for having me. And it's really sad to hear that we have the Republican nominee for governor here in Arizona who's talking like that. I think, the votes that were just released, 78,000, that doesn't happen magically. It happens because of the people behind me, all the people here in Maricopa County elections who are working so hard. They're working 14 to 18-hour days.
Now, I understand that, and we've tried to be very empathetic for all of the people working in the actual tabulation center. And every time we've had a video about this, right, we can all sort of, groan about the slow delay. But I'm always trying to be very cautious about this because there are a bunch of volunteers in there who are donating their time. And we've watched on the Maricopa County tabulation videos. We can look in there and you see people looking at thousands of pages of documents. And, I don't know about you, but when I went down to my polling place, there's a lot of volunteers. I think a lot of people are probably veterans and sort of retired, senior citizens and people who are really making sure that these gears continue to work. The problem I have is with the bureaucrats. It's with the people who create these PowerPoint slides and, they whiteboard this whole thing out and they give us these lectures from behind their podiums on CNN about how any criticism of them is like a criticism of the people. Okay. Nobody's criticizing the poll counters, Bill. People are criticizing you, dum-dum. They're not upset with the people who are, like adjudicating these things. We know we've got a rabid Democrat and a Republican adjudicating these ballots. We got all of that. We have an issue with you and with the way that this entire thing has been conducted and how you continue to sort of scoff at the rest of us for saying, what the hell is taking so long? And how is it able to conduct you able to conduct your affairs this way? And if you think that this is all normal, as he says, and all ordinary, we're going to get to a clip in a minute, but let's finish up with him here.
Every day. We're about to go into a holiday weekend with Veterans Day, and they're going to continue to work those kind of hours on the holiday Friday.
Okay, so he's taking the blame that is being levied towards him. You understand this technique? Kari Lake says Bill Gates is an idiot. He says, I can't believe you're calling them idiots. I can't believe you're criticizing them. Nobody's criticizing them. We're criticizing you.
On Saturday and Sunday. And I understand that Kari Lake wants us to move quickly, and a lot of people do. But you know what's more important?
Now, do you sense the tone, the disdain? He's counting the votes for Kari Lake right now, and he hates her.
Is that this is done accurately. That is the focus. And that, like for all of these mail-in ballots, that those are signature verified. This is very important to me as an elected official, that only eligible people, only eligible votes are counted. I would think that Kari Lake would be interested in that as well.
She is interested in that. She just wants it done rapidly.
That's something that I ran on the Board of Supervisors. I support ID at the polls. And all those things, they might take a little bit more time, but it ensures that only those eligible people are voting.
Mm-hmm. All right, so that's Bill Gates. Now, of course, he doesn't want any responsibility. He doesn't want any blame. Everything is according to plan. This is Arizona. It's all pretty normal. Not a whole lot to really, get all up in a tizzy about is what he's saying here. Just take your onesies and twosies and just calm down here. Don't get your hair all in a bunch. It's weird, dude. The rest of us in Arizona don't talk like this guy. All right? I don't know what's going on here, but this is an interesting clip because he's saying that, everything's normal, except it's not. County Supervisor Bill Gates says everything is going according to plan. This is how Arizona law works. It's been this way for many years. And the only difference is that deadline that I gave you prior is not actually accurate anymore because actually everything is different this time. Sorry.
62,000 last night, but not significantly more. So if you're interested in that, pay attention at the 8 o'clock hour. Why is it taking the amount of time it's taking? A lot of people are talking about this. Well, first of all, it's very standard. This is how things work in Arizona and have for decades. And this is due in part because of mail-in voting, and Recorder Richard's going to talk about that more. But I told this group that we anticipated 95 to 99% of the ballots to be counted by Friday. That's tomorrow. But I'm here to tell you the goalposts have changed.
Oh, weird.
All right.
Well, that's weird. Well, why did the goalposts change? If everything was normal and ordinary, and this is how we've been doing it in Arizona for the last several decades, and it's much ado about nothing, everybody's talking about this, but it's all normal. Well, then why, Mr. Bill Gates, did you not meet your deadline that you gave to us yourself on Friday? If everything's normal, you're very much used to this process. You should have hit your target, no? Or are things not that usual and ordinary, which is why we now have a new target, which is now Wednesday or whenever you're done? So which is it? Is everything going appropriately by the books or not? Well, time is telling us that according to your own standards, you have to reset the goalposts. Why do you have to reset the goalpost if this is just standard
taking
ordinary
the
business?
amount of time it's taking? A lot of people are talking about this. Well, first of all, it's very standard. This is how things work in Arizona.
If it's standard, it's just like anything else. You order a pizza, it'll be ready in 20 minutes. Okay, great. If it takes 2 hours, then you have a question about it. It's not standard ordering of a pizza.
And have for decades. And this is due in part because of mail-in voting, and Recorder Richard's going to talk about that more. But I told this group that we anticipated 90 to 95%, or sorry, 95 to 99% of the ballots to be counted by Friday.
Wrong.
That's tomorrow. But I'm here to tell you the goalposts have changed. All right.
And they worked all through the weekend, and now it's Monday, so they're 3 days late, and it's still not at 98%. So that's weird. I wonder how everything that is so ordinary and standard and nothing is strange, nothing's unusual, why we have to push a bunch of stuff back 3 days. I don't know. Weird. I don't know. Maybe, I don't know. Maybe somebody in the media can ask him about that. But that is what is going on in Arizona. One final reminder, my friends, if you are in the state of Arizona and you want to make sure your ballot is counted, go to karilake.com/cure and check the status of your ballot. Of course, I did that. You can see my ballot was counted. I voted hard and fast. And it was counted. On 11/8, it said you voted on election day, your ballot was counted. But definitely go check if your ballot was not counted in the state of Arizona, because every vote is going to count on this one. So go check. I know you got the green thumbs up or you put it in the mail and you feel great about it, but go check. karilake.com/cure. Now, let's take a quick look about what's happening or what's coming out. Of course, we've been following along with the data guru. He's got some updates for us. He says that we had a batch that came in from Pinal County. We're now at 94% complete. So we're getting closer and closer to what we saw as prognosticated from Mr. Bill Gates, that this thing should be done today or tomorrow. We've got a breakdown, 51% from Pinal County. It's not that good for Kari Lake, if I got to be honest. Pinal, I think, should have been higher than that. Let's see what else. We had, yep, there was a war room. They're expecting a loss. Great. We've got another one. There was a press conference that took place earlier. Several of those clips came from those. And we're waiting for final ballot drops to take place tonight at about 6 o'clock Arizona time. So in about an hour and a half from now, you can see this is some video from the scene where they're counting the ballots. Maricopa County coming in at 6 p.m. tonight, and so we'll check back in. We'll see if we are still streaming when those votes come in. But it is looking very tight, not looking very, very good for several candidates out there in Arizona. But we will continue to cover that. There will be a lot of fallout, undoubtedly, and so that is the update in Arizona. Thank you for liking this video wherever you're watching it. Thank you for subscribing and following. We'll continue to be here. All right, and let's hit some of these super chats while we're here, because I saw several of them come in. We had this one from Zulu, says, are people upset because of the impatience, or do they think the length of time indicates something? If it indicates something, how exactly does taking longer do that? Well, I got to be careful here, Zulu, but I guess that, I guess the concept is that people think that if there's more gray area, that there's opportunities for people to go find certain votes, for example. So like in Arizona, okay, we've got like this curing process. We've got these windows of time where somebody can go out and generate a bunch of additional activity. Somebody, go get this, go get that, generate a bunch of stuff or close the gap. I think that's what people are concerned about. And we haven't seen any evidence of that yet. Now, we haven't seen any real, inquiries take place. I'm not alleging that at all, but we are seeing some weird stuff go on. And I think that's what people are talking about. People are concerned about, you've got these conflict of interests. You've got a situation where, Stephen Richer, who's counting the votes, hates people like Kari Lake. It sort of begs the question. You have other situations where, let's just flip it around, Zulu. It's a great question. Let's just flip it around and say, what happens if we did some, like, let's say Republicans did something on election day that that impacted, doesn't matter if it's consequential or not, okay, doesn't matter if it actually caused anything to happen or not, but let's just say that the Republicans did something that impacted 7% of all Democratic voters, or change the R to a D, right? So change R to a D, or change R to women. 7% of women voters got their ballots impacted because of election day good morning problems, or 7% of mail-in ballots had a problem, or let's say, African-American votes. Weird, 7% of all of their ballots, just something happened to them. Doesn't matter, whether it went into a different door or got a different slot or something, or maybe they were just disincentivized. They were dissuaded from coming to vote. 7% of them, or long lines that impacted African American voters, were seen somewhere. It would be a meltdown, right? It would be the end of the world. So in this situation, yeah, I think it's perfectly appropriate for Republicans to have some questions about it, and to wonder where stuff gets messy in the middle when the process drags on and on and on. But we're just we're just sort of waiting for the results to come out. Now we've got Bear Ashby says, I found Nancy. She's drunk counting votes in Arizona. It's, she might be. Who knows? Nancy Pelosi's drunk most of the time, whether she's here in Arizona or not, is a whole nother story. I think, I missed some of those other super chats. We'll catch those up on the rear, my friends, when we get over to those. I saw one come in on local, says, from C. Wolf, says, call out the Stasi lurkers in the group, Rob. Oh, we'll get to those too. All right. And so, my friends, that is it for Kari Lake. Thank you for those super chats. We've got some serious heavy lifting to continue to get into today. And so I want to keep the pace rocking and rolling here. Donald Trump sues the January 6th Select Committee, and this is going to have consequences, of course, for that subpoena. He got a big fat subpoena coming in from the Democrats, from the January 6th committee at one point in time, and I want to share that with you. You may remember this. We have already talked a lot about the actual subpoena, and so I don't want to spend too much time on this, but remember back in October 21st, the January 6th Select Committee sent a letter to Trump. They said, Dear Mr. President Trump, former, United States Representative Resolution 503, which we've talked about, is illegal. It's supposed to say 13 members of Congress. It doesn't. It's supposed to be 5 Republicans. It doesn't have them. Said that they were properly created and that they were authorized to go investigate the insurrection protest that took place. And they sent this big whopper over to him, right? 10 pages. And they wanted everything, a multi-part effort that was going after false allegations, stuff from the Department of Justice. They said without evidentiary basis, you were putting pressure on the states, and you were challenging the National Archives and pressuring Congress, and so on and so forth. Now, the committee said, obviously you were the president. You were central to this gigantic scheme. They demanded, and they've even prosecuted several of these people like Roger Stone, Michael Flynn, John Eastman, Kelly Ward. All of them are under scrutiny. So they go through, they give us a little bit of a history lesson. They tell us other presidents have been in and come before Congress to testify. You see this document signed by Benny Thompson and Vice Chair Liz Cheney. Liz Cheney, who lost her place as a Republican in the party by 40 points. She's going to be thrown out of Wyoming soon. But this was everything they wanted, right? Massive fishing expedition going after Trump. They say, in accordance, we want all of the following things: all telephone calls, all text messages, anything through Signal or any other app that you've ever used ever. Anything from December 18th to January 6th. They want all photographs. They want all video recordings. Telephone calls, text messages, written notes, memoranda, anything, right? Possible travel, everything. So we spent a lot of time on this. I want to just sort of run through it briefly so you know what Donald Trump is responding to. Okay, paragraph 12, paragraph 13, paragraph 14. Also, any communication sent to the following people the J6 committee wants: Roger Stone, Steve Bannon, Rudy Giuliani, Jenna Ellis, Sidney Powell, Patrick Byrd, and others. Anything that was sent over to your lawyers that's not attorney-client privilege, all of that is, of course, in the gigantic list of things they want. Here's the official subpoena to Donald Trump, 45th President of the United States. You're hereby ordered to show up. And they gave him extensions on this. The prior subpoena was for November 4th and November 14th, which is today. They gave him some additional extensions on that. You see this was signed off on by Benny Thompson. Here is the committee that they submitted over. And they only gave us the first little portion of this here. Resolved that Donald Trump is hereby subpoenaed. They all passed the vote and they all sent it over. So Committee Resolution 1, that's the official subpoena sent over to Donald Trump in October. Now, Donald Trump responded to this, and it is a 41-page document that we are going to get to. We're going to read through the entire thing. But first, my friends, we have to check in with our sponsors at 4 Patriots. As you know, my friends, a food shortage could be coming here. Even in the United States, experts have been talking about this as recently as July. Drought, inflation, Biden's new policies, they are pushing our food supply to a breaking point. That's why survival food is more important now than ever. You can create your stockpile of the best-selling 4 Patriots survival food kits today. This is not ordinary food. We're talking about good for 25 years, super survival food. Stuff is hand-packed right here in the United States, giving jobs to over 200 Americans. Kits are compact, they're sturdy, they're water-resistant, they stack easily. Many different delicious breakfast, lunches, and dinners. You can make these meals in less than 20 minutes. You just have to add boiling water, simmer, and serve. And right now, you can go to 4patriots.com and you can use this promo code Robert to get 10% off your first purchase of anything in the store, including a 3-month survival kit. You get their famous guarantee for an entire year after you order. You get free shipping on anything over $97. They're called 4 Patriots because a portion of every sale is donated to charities who support our veterans and their families. Go to 4patriots.com, use code Robert, get 10% off your order. It's 4patriots.com, use code Robert. All right, and now we are going to be talking about Trump's lawsuit against the January 6 Select Committee. Trump sues the J6 Committee. It's a 41-page filing submitted out of West Palm Beach in the Southern District of Florida. Donald Trump, 45th President of the United States, versus the Select Committee to investigate the Capitol. Trump is also naming Nancy Pelosi, Speaker of the House. We've got Benny Thompson, Elizabeth Cheney, Adam Pencilneck Schiff, Jaime Raskin, Susan Lofgren. We've got Elaine Luria, Pete Aguilar, Stephanie Mercy, and of course, Adam Crying Kinzinger, who is the second Republican, who's also no longer going to be in Congress the next time. Kinzinger is gone, and we have Cheney, who's gone, but this is Donald Trump's lawsuit against them regardless, against the entire J6 committee. Trump files a complaint for declaratory and injunctive relief. He says the following: Plaintiff Donald Trump hereby sues the Select Committee to investigate the J6 attack on the Capitol. In a preliminary statement, Trump's lawyers write the following. It says, Donald Trump, the 45th President of the United States, was issued a subpoena by the committee to turn over documents and to testify. Now, while other presidents and former presidents, Trump is making a distinction here, have voluntarily agreed to testify or turn over documents, no former president or actual president has ever been compelled to do so. Saying if Trump wants to show up like other presidents have and testify, he's free to do that. But if not, you can't compel him. Instead, Trump's lawyers say to the contrary. For half a century, the DOJ has consistently opined that presidents and former presidents have absolute immunity from compelled congressional testimony. They are citing what they say are 50 years of Office of Legal Counsel opinions and collecting case authorities. Remember, when Trump and Bannon and others were fighting against the J6 committee, many of these arguments have been investigated. And they are saying, we have gone through the Department of Justice's own memoranda. They have reviewed this issue. This hasn't been the first time a president has been wanted to be called in front of Congress. This has happened before. The DOJ has addressed this issue. And Trump's lawyers say, we're going back to 50 years of this stuff. In a formal opinion, a prior attorney general named Janet Reno wrote that this immunity is, quote, absolute, and it may not be overborne by competing congressional interests. Okay, the president has absolute immunity. She wrote that back in 1999. The Supreme Court has held, Trump's lawyers continue, quote, Congress and the president have an ongoing institutional relationship as opposite and rival political branches established by the Constitution. And as a result, congressional subpoenas that go to the president differ markedly from congressional subpoenas that we have previously reviewed. They bear little resemblance to criminal subpoenas issued to the president in the course of a specific case. Trump's writing and referencing another 2020 case involving him. Without limits on its powers and its subpoena powers, Congress, they argue, could exert an imperious control over the executive branch and aggrandize itself at the president's expense, just as the framers feared. Quoting the Federalist 71. What happens if you just say, yeah, Congress can go after any president anytime for any reason, give him a subpoena for whatever? Who's more powerful then, Congress or the president? That's interesting because we have a structure where we have what are called co-equal branches, meaning Congress is not more powerful than the president. And just like we've talked about in other arguments, just like NARA, the National Archives, is not more powerful than the president. If NARA says, well, you got to fill out this form in order to take those documents, who is in control of the declassification proceeding? NARA or the president? Who has that power, in other words? Same argument is being made here. If Congress can just do whatever the hell they want, then there is no separation of powers and they're really in charge. Trump's team continues. They say, the separation of powers concerned raised by congressional aggrandizement at the expense of the executive branch does not expire when the president leaves. Okay, it's not like he's just in there for the moment. And then it's a free-for-all as soon as he leaves office. As President Truman, a Democrat, wrote in response to a subpoena from the House of Representatives when they had a prior version of their Committee on Un-American Activities. This is a new version of that. But some time ago, Truman was a president, and there was a Committee on Un-American Activities. Same thing that we have right now, except they call it the January 6th Committee. It's just a sort of a rebranding of an old concept. But back then, he wrote in response to a subpoena. So their J6 Insurrection Committee sent another letter to Truman back then. And he responded and he said, hey, losers, he said, it must be obvious to you that if the doctrine of separation of powers and the independence of the presidency is to have any validity at all, it must be equally applicable to a president after his term of office has expired when he is sought to be examined with respect to any acts occurring while he was president. The doctrine would be shattered and the president, contrary to our fundamental theory of constitutional government, would become a mere arm of the legislative branch of the government if he would feel during his term of office that his every act might be subject to the official inquiry and the possible distortion for political purposes of his office. If Congress can just draft a subpoena from some illegally constituted committee that's got, geniuses like Liz Cheney and Benny Thompson on there, and that's all it takes is to go and just beat a president to death, that sort of means that Congress has a lot more power than the president. The president has to fight every stinking subpoena from Congress that comes through here? No, that's not how the framers structured this at all. Letters were sent from Harry Truman. You can read the full thing at that URL. This view has been long held and reiterated in open court by the Department of Justice. And they did that in recently as September 2022. The only possible exception to this absolute testimonial immunity, an exception which Trump's defense team is acknowledging here, which is even hotly contested in academic circles, is for testimony in connection with the House of Representatives impeachment jurisdiction. Okay, so now we're having to find, okay, wait a minute. Trump's not even in office anymore. And January 6th Select Committee is now ordering him to be here. Who has power to order who to be where? They're saying there might be one way that the committee does have some power because, well, the House has impeachment power, right? Constitution talks about that. So if we're going to be referencing, the Federalist Papers and other prior founding documents from the framers, we should also look at this one because it's in there. But in this case, the subpoena issued by the committee to Trump does not arise from an impeachment inquiry. They already did that twice. This is a whole new one. They already tried to impeach him for the insurrection, and they're trying it again through this illegal J6 committee. But for the reasons below, the committee lacks authority to issue the subpoena, and in any event, President Trump is not required to comply. Now, the consequences of this, right, since this lawsuit has ultimately been filed, essentially means that Trump is not going to show up and testify. By the time this works its way through the court systems, it's going to be over, right? The balance of power will have changed, theoretically, presuming that the Republicans win the House. If they don't win the House, well, then I guess it's still going to be in charge of, the Democrats, and maybe they re-extend the committee or something like that. But it's looking like the Republicans are going to win. And if that is the case, then by the time this particular lawsuit gets ironed out, the committee is going to have sunset. But Trump's lawyers continue. They say, as a result of the committee's self-described unprecedented action, Trump has been put in an untenable position of choosing between preserving his rights and the constitutional prerogatives of the executive branch, or risk enforcement of the subpoena issued to him. Accordingly, Trump turns to the courts. Trump is going back over to you to preserve his rights, which have prior been upheld. Trump's lawyers argue, they say, this lawsuit, as a matter of first impression, arises from unprecedented facts. We seek a declaration to stop this committee from moving forward. Prior to filing this lawsuit, they say Trump attempted to resolve this dispute with the committee through various proposals that would have provided the committee with the information it needs while protecting the interest of the executive branch. The committee, however, insists that the person of President Trump must yield to the demands of Congress. Trump and his lawyers are saying, we have tried to negotiate all about this, Judge. We've sent letters. We've, had conversations with them. They don't want that. They don't want the executive branch to work with the legislative branch. They want total subjugation of Trump. Trump's team says, the committee's subpoena is invalid as explained below. The committee did not issue the subpoena to further a valid legislative purpose. They're just going after Trump. They're not going to pass a new law, are they? Other than Trump is illegal, if they could. The subpoena is unwarranted because other sources can provide the information the subpoena seeks. The subpoena is broader than necessary. It infringes on executive privilege. It infringes on Trump's First Amendment rights. The committee is not duly authorized. Shout out to that argument. Holy crap, I've been screaming about that for years now. And the committee lacks authority to issue subpoenas in the first place. Accordingly, Trump turns the courts to preserve his rights, and in so doing so, the separation of powers essential to our Constitution. Now, they list the parties. Of course, we've got Donald Trump. We've got the House of Representatives listed. Speaker Pelosi is listed. Benny Thompson, Liz Cheney, Pencil Neck Schiff, Watermelon Head, Jaime Raskin, Lofgren, Luria. Several of these people have lost their House races, by the way. I think Luria's gone, maybe. Aguilar, Murphy, Cryan Adam Kinzinger, who's also been districted out. We know where the jurisdiction is, located in Florida. We get some relevant facts. And the relevant facts are as follows. Trump was sworn in as president. He served as president until January 20th. Constitution says we have a president. Total power of executive is vested in him. The president shall be the commander-in-chief and other things and has other authorities. On January 6th, a large group of people entered the U.S. Capitol, disrupted and delayed the electoral counting votes. Now, to this date, this fact is always something that shocks me. I mean, it doesn't, we've covered it at this point in time, but they haven't even cracked, apparently, more than 1,000 individuals, according to this lawsuit. And I think that's probably about right. We previously did a count, and it was about 750, almost 800 people charged. So now he's saying more than 900 individuals. I don't know if it's more than 1,000 yet officially on the DOJ website. I have to take a look. It doesn't matter if it's 1,000, if it's 1,500. Okay, that's it. We've had 1,500 people, let's say, which is, I'm sure it's less than that, who have actually been charged with crimes out of this thing. Think about the tens of millions of dollars and the tens of thousands of hours that we have invested in this saga for less than 1,000 people charged with crimes. It's like a Super Bowl. Okay, like a Super Bowl, there'll be thousands of additional criminal charges anywhere. You have a big golf tournament or something, a racing NASCAR tournament. Okay, we just had one in Arizona, right? All sorts of charges. So it's just unusual that they make this the biggest thing in the country for less than 1,000 people. Okay, and they're all mostly trespass charges, like You walked into a building. All right. Anyways, I digress. Following the events of January 6th, Trump was impeached by the House of Representatives, but acquitted by the Senate. Trump was not issued a subpoena in connection with the J6 impeachment inquiry, or I'm sorry, the January inquiry or the Senate trial. Trump was not issued a subpoena in his prior trials. But now they say that they want a subpoena. And where does the subpoena come from? Well, that's right. From the January 6th Select Committee. Some background. After a failed attempt to establish a bipartisan commission, they couldn't do that. Remember, the House of Representatives had to default to something else. On June 28th, Speaker Pelosi introduced H.R. 503, which is their governing document, which they are not following. That document established the Select Committee to investigate J6. 2 days later, the House passed H.R. 503 on a near party line vote, 22 yeas, 190 nays. The only two Republicans, Cheney and Kinzinger, voted in favor of H.R. 503, right? The only two Republicans who ever made it onto the committee, two Republicans who are not even going to be Republicans very, very soon. 503 establishes three functions of the committee. One, they got to investigate the domestic terrorist attack, is what they called it. They have to identify and evaluate lessons they learned from the domestic terrorist attack. You see how this goes? And they also have to issue a final report as it deems necessary. They're going to describe corrective measures to help stop this domestic violent extremism from happening and improve the security posture of the Capitol. Now, H.R. 503 says the law that is like their constitution, right? It created this entire committee, provides that the committee may not hold a markup of legislation. It says that the chair, upon consultation with the ranking minority member, may take depositions, including issue subpoenas and so on. It instructs the speaker to appoint 13 members. Do you see that number there? 13 members to the committee. Only 5 of which, this is in the law, H.R. 503, only 5 of which shall be appointed after consultation with the minority leader. Democrats get 8, Republicans get 5. H.R. 503 says that's the rules. Speaker Pelosi appointed Chairman Thompson to serve as the committee and appointed 6 additional Democrats: Lofgren, Schiff, Aguilar, Murphy, Raskin, Luria. She also appointed Cheney without any designation of opinion. So boom, she's got her people. It's like a game of dodgeball. You pick your kids and you pick your team. House Minority Leader Kevin McCarthy recommended 5 Republican members to serve on the committee, consistent with the law, H.R. 503. Representative Jim Banks of Indiana was listed. Rodney Davis of Illinois. Jim Jordan would have been great, of Ohio. Kelly Armstrong, North Dakota. Troy Niels of Texas. Those would be the minority members who made up the Republican 5. But guess what? Speaker Pelosi did not appoint Representative Banks to serve as a ranking member, nor did she appoint any of Minority Leader Kevin McCarthy's other recommended minority members. Weird. In a public statement, she acknowledged that her refusal to appoint the members recommended by Minority Leader was, quote, an unprecedented decision. She said that. Press release from her, July 21st, 2021. It's even on speaker.gov/newsroom. If you want to see her full statement on it, go follow the URL. Speaker Pelosi, H.R. 503 says you're supposed to have 13 members, 8 Democrats, 5 Republicans. You got your 8 Democrats. What about the 5 Republicans? Why aren't you appointing them? I know it says that, but this is unprecedented because why? Let's see. Instead, Speaker Pelosi appointed Rep. Kinzinger, the only other Republican other than Rep. Cheney, who voted in favor of 503 and left 4 vacancies. Okay, Cheney filled one of her slots, not one of the Republicans. So the Republicans got 0 people they wanted on this committee. Not 2, 0. Pelosi picked Kinzinger and Cheney. So the joke that this committee is, it just gets even worse. Okay, these Republicans were not even picked by Republicans. The result is the committee effectively lacks minority party representation, which is what we've been screaming about here for years now, because it's the House of Representatives. Okay, representative is in the name. How can you be a representative body if it doesn't represent the body? In this case, no Republicans that the Republicans wanted on the committee were ever put on the committee. House Rule XI 2 sub D instructs that a committee chair shall designate a member of the majority party as the vice chair of the committee. That's why Chairman Thompson shoved Liz Cheney up in there, picked her as the party. 503 says upon consultation, they may order the taking of depositions. Neither HR 503 nor the House rules define the term ranking minority member, and so we have to use common knowledge on what that means. We had the first hearings take place. After the first hearing, Chairman Thompson told reporters the select committee could have another hearing in August while we have a 7-week recess. But they didn't have another hearing in August, nor did they have another recess. The committee held 7 additional hearings during previous times. At no time during more than a year of hearings did the committee formally request President Trump voluntarily testify or provide any documents. On September 19th, committee members Lofgren and Cheney wanted to introduce a new act to amend the Electoral Count Act. Cheney gave a quote to the Wall Street Journal, said, "The committee will have more to say in the months to come about Trump's plans, but in the meantime, we're going to try to change the law." They made arguments in front of the House, and then they subpoenaed Trump. After holding no hearings for 2.5 months, and after 2 members of the committee drafted and introduced a bill to ensure that what happened on J6 never happens again, which passed the House of Representatives, the committee decided to hold one more hearing less than 1 month before the 2020 midterm elections. Yeah, because the narrative this election season was all about what? The death of democracy. MAGA Republican extremists attacking people with hammers everywhere you turn. At the October 13th hearing, Chairman Thompson explained the purported need to subpoena Trump. He said, "The need for this committee to hear from Trump goes beyond our fact-finding. Accountability to the American people. He's required to answer his questions, and he's required to answer those millions of Americans who wanted to vote, but they couldn't." He said, "I've served in Congress for a long time, and it's tough to get a detailed report from the president's inner circle, and so they just decided to subpoena him." The subpoena that was issued after the committee smashed their heads together leaves no doubt that the focus is on Trump's action as president. It's addressed to Trump as action as president, 45th president. It talks about his obligation as president. And their bills and all their recommendations say that no future president should be responsible or capable of doing this type of stuff. And so what they're saying is that this goes to Trump's role as president, which gives them more defense, right? Because the president has additional powers, right? The president is as equal, as powerful as Congress. And so they're saying they're going after him as president, not as a private citizen. They say that the subpoena is invalid because Trump has absolute testimonial immunity. The president is the only person who alone composes a branch of government. Look at that quote from the Supreme Court in the Mazars case. The president is the only person who alone composes a branch of government. The Department of Justice made clear in September 2022 that a subpoena seeking to compel a former president presents an issue that compounds and implicates the office of the president. It's a big deal. The Justice Department has had a long-standing view that presidents are absolutely immune from Congress. That used to be the rule until it became about Donald Trump. Then all of the rules are thrown out of the door. Janet Reno made similar statements. She gave a bunch of rationale as to why the president is immune. She says the immunity for a president is absolute, and it may not be overborne by competing congressional interests. Truman and others have made similar statements, saying that they've got obligations to carry out the duties of the executive branch. Trump's team says that the committee did not issue the subpoena to further a valid legislative purpose, right? They're sort of using this as a pseudo grand jury committee. They're basically creating an excuse to prosecute Donald Trump without prosecuting Donald Trump. They're almost taking an executive function under a legislative body. The committee's purpose is to consider multiple legislative recommendations. They say it's vague, it's loosely worded, it's too big, it's too broad. That means they can basically do whatever they want. And the committee shouldn't be allowed to be operating in such a vague manner. The rest of the lawsuit you see is expanding upon that. They say the subpoena is broader than necessary. It asks for all sorts of information that goes beyond January 6th, violates the separation of powers by infringing upon Trump's executive privilege, also impedes Trump's First Amendment rights to free speech, saying the broad scope of the subpoena threatens to force Trump to reveal the inner workings of his campaign. Compelled speech, demanding that he communicate with them. And they give us in subsection G an argument that just almost brings me to tears. They say, the committee is not a duly authorized committee, and it lacks the authority to even issue the subpoena. The composition is governed by Section 2 of H.R. 503. It says, the Speaker shall appoint 13 members to the House, 5 of whom are Republicans. Pelosi only appointed 9 members to the committee, 7 Democrats and 2 Republicans. None of these members were appointed from the selection of 5 GOP congressmen. Okay, so the Republicans really appointed 0. This entire time I was saying there are 2 Republicans on there. The Republicans didn't even appoint those 2. Liz Cheney was appointed, well, both of them were appointed by Speaker Pelosi. Nobody was even put forward by the Republicans. While the court determined that authorized congressional committees have certain subpoena power, the committee is not an authorized congressional committee. The committee fails to comport with its own authorizing resolution, H.R. 503. Congress's failure to act in accordance with its own rules is judicially cognizable, they say. Now, that means that the courts can recognize this. Remember that, we had a great conversation here with Nate the lawyer and others about why the courts have not honored this, right? If you and I are sitting here and we're sitting around going, it's obvious. It says there's supposed to be 13 members. There's not, there's 9. Obviously not following their own rules. The courts just say, well, what do you want us to do about it? Right? Because what happens if the court now can step in to interfere with Congress? That sort of means that the court is more powerful than Congress, and we don't want that to happen either, just like we don't want Congress to be more powerful than Trump in this case, or the executive branch, right? In this case, they should all be co-equal. And so the courts have deferred to Congress, and they said, well, if they want to run their committees in illegal form, they're free to do that. There's not much we can do about that. But the Democrats have been saying the courts have been authorizing them or confirming that this is not a problem, and that is not true at all. The courts have just been deferring to them. And in this case, there's really no remedy to stop an illegally constituted committee other than voting people out of Congress. Now they're saying here that when a committee does this, there is a judicially cognizable claim. In other words, you can file a lawsuit. You can make a claim under this basis, which is what they're doing here, saying that in this case, a person's fundamental rights are involved. Congress is using their levers to go impede Trump's fundamental rights. Speaker Pelosi, they argue, failed to appoint members consistent with the resolution that they have in their own House. Appointed 9 members. Shall is the word that we've talked about. It's not may. It's not we recommend. It's not a nice suggestion. It's not on a Tuesday or Thursday. It's shall. The word is shall. Shall appoint 13 members. It's not discretionary. It's mandatory. Thus, the committee, as it currently stands and stood at the time that it was issued, has no authority to conduct business because it's not duly constituted. Obvious. It's like the most obvious argument. The committee lacks authority to compel depositions. They go through some technical stuff here. And so Trump's lawyers are asking for several things. Count 1. They want declaratory relief. They say this matter is an actual controversy. There are several reasons why the committee's subpoena is invalid and why Trump should not be compelled to testify. He has absolute immunity. This subpoena is explicitly addressed to President Trump in his capacity as a former president. They have no valid legislative purpose to seek his testimony. The demand includes 1,000+ witnesses, and it's way overbroad, more so than reasonably necessary. It's not limited to their legislative purposes. They want to incriminate him and just skewer him. And executive privilege protects him from all of this. He's got First Amendment protections. The overbroad subpoena would reveal the inner workings of his presidential campaign, which is protected. And the committee is illegally constituted in the first place. The word said shall. They didn't do that. Therefore, Trump and his lawyers say they ask the court to enter judgment in his favor for the following. 1, a declaratory judgment that the J6 subpoena and any other subpoena is invalid, unlawful, unenforceable because Trump, as a former president, has absolute immunity from being compelled before Congress. They also want a declaratory judgment saying that any lawsuit or any subpoena is invalid, a declaratory judgment that it's an intrusion into the executive branch and that all of these subpoenas are unenforceable for a variety of reasons. They want sanctions against the subpoena and an award of attorney's fees, including any other fees that are deemed reasonable, signed off on by Harmeet Dillon from the Dillon Law Group and her co-counsel Matthew Sarelson, Florida Bar, submitting this in the Florida District Court out of Florida. Donald Trump versus the January 6th Select Committee, demanding that the court order the subpoenas to be declared invalid. Now, we'll, of course, wait and see what the response looks like because the House lawyers and the government is going to respond to all of that, and that should be fun. But I guess the takeaway on that is there was not, this is good. This is litigation now. And provided that the Republicans are taking over the House of Representatives, the subpoena is very likely going to expire, right? The committee will expire before this litigation is completed or concluded. So Trump is very unlikely to be testifying in front of the January 6th Select Committee. I was kind of hoping he would, to be honest. I kind of wanted him to just kick the doors open, come in with 2 Secret Service guys, Melania, under his arm, and just walk right in there and start answering questions. But doesn't look like that's going to happen. Jaime Raskin is saying Donald Trump might even be Speaker of the House now that the January 6th Select Committee is probably on its way out and Trump is not testifying. Maybe the Republicans take over the House J6 Select Committee, or they form their own stupid committee of their own. Or if Adam Raskin is accurately concerned, maybe Trump takes over the whole House, gets the gavel that Speaker Pelosi left behind.
Election deniers didn't prevail in the key battlegrounds, but CBS tallied it, and at least 155 House Republicans in the new Congress have raised unfounded doubts about the validity or integrity of the 2020 election. These are going to be your colleagues that you will be working with. What change is that going to affect in the work you do?
Well, that's a statement about the political contamination of the GOP by Donald Trump. And again, Kevin McCarthy and other leaders within the Republican Party are now required to make a decision about whether they're going to try to rid themselves of Donald Trump and his toxic influence on the party.
Do you see what they're doing here? Now, there's a lot of people on multiple sides in America, multiple political spectrums, Democrats, Republicans, even divisions within the Republican Party. But there is a wedge that the Democrats are trying to shove down the Republicans' gullets. You can see Raskin articulating that right here. He's saying, oh my gosh, Republicans are going to have to make a choice. McCarthy's going to have to make a choice. McConnell's going to have to make a choice. Why does anybody have to make a choice about anything other than what they want to decide about? Why do we have to listen to Jaime Raskin dictating what the appropriate choices are for responsible politicking in America? But what they want to do is to create division. They want Trump versus DeSantis or Trump versus Youngkin. They want everybody killing each other within the Republican Party, because when you can cause and sow seeds of division within a group, if you're oppositional to that group, you'll succeed. While these people are out there killing themselves, making tough decisions, having to make a declaration one way or the other, supporting Trump, not supporting Trump, whatever it is, then they get to see the victory no matter who wins. Because at the conclusion, DeSantis is weaker. At the conclusion, Trump is weaker. The Republican Party in general is weaker. And so what they are doing here is driving this wedge. Everybody's got to make a decision right now because Jaime Raskin says so.
These 155 House Republicans are his constituency. Kevin McCarthy, if he wants to be leader, will need to consider the
Well,
needs
it's
of
a real
everyone.
problem for Kevin McCarthy now because there are certain pro-Trumpists within his House caucus who refuse to accept that he's really with Trump, and they want to get rid of McCarthy. And some of them, they have names very early in the alphabet, like Biggs, and they might just vote for Trump when they, take the roll call for Speaker. So we know.
Vote for Trump for the roll call for Speaker? Oh my gosh. So they're saying that Donald Trump might be the Speaker of the House of Representatives? Wow, how scary would that be? They would really have to, I guess, beat America to death with the saving America from insurrection talk if Trump is going to be around for the next several years.
That the hard right Freedom Caucus people are in search of another candidate. And one potential candidate whose name has been floated is Donald Trump himself, because the Speaker of the House does not have to be a member of the House. And they are talking about putting Trump right there.
That's not a real option now.
Well, they talk about it repeatedly. And if Trump decided he wanted to do it, it would pose a profound problem for their party because they refuse to do the right thing early on. I mean, today it's...
So even CNN is telling slippery Jaime Raskin, you're not serious. Like, are you out of your stinking mind? Trump's going to be the Speaker of the House. What are you, nuts? Like, did you take your TDS medicine today, Jaime? You're looking a little bit agitated. And no, I'm serious about this. I'm serious. They're talking about it. He could take over. He could insurrect the gavel. So we have to stop him.
Seems like the spell has been broken. It's begun to dissolve. We don't have Republicans around the country claiming that they really won when it's been certified that they lost their elections. And yet there's still this big lie dogma, which, as you say, has been embraced by 150 members within their caucus. And so that is going to create profound cognitive and political dissonance within the GOP. Is it really Trump's party, or does it stand for something else? And Liz Cheney and Adam Kinzinger are going to force that question. They're going to force the Republicans to choose.
That's what they want to do. They want to force that decision to be made. Nobody's asking for Liz Cheney or Adam Kinzinger's approval. Nobody cares what they say about the Republican Party. So why are all of the Republicans suddenly trying to slit each other's throats over this stuff? I see all of these, influencers and big people out there who want to just slice the other side's throat within the own party. It's one of the dumbest things I've ever seen. If you want to win as a unified party, it's ridiculous. The wedge apparently seems to be working. They're going to continue to do it. It's about as obvious as anything the Democrats have ever done. And the more the Republicans continue to play into that narrative, the more hurt they are going to become. Now, in the meantime, we've got some pretty big announcements coming up. We are all preparing for a Trump announcement. He has said that tomorrow will be the day. We played clips last week from Jason Miller, who is an advisor who communicated to us that tomorrow will be the day. It's all going to be a buttoned up affair, not even going to be a whole big ordeal. It's just he's going to come out and announce it. It's going to be pretty obvious. But as this is getting underway, right, 2024 is already afoot. We have a representative from New York. Her name is Elise Stefanik. She has preemptively already endorsed Donald Trump for another bid at the White House. Says, I'm proud to endorse Donald Trump. I'm fully supporting him running again, she told Breitbart News in a statement. She wrote, under his presidency, America was strong at home and abroad. Our economy was red hot. Our border was secure. Our neighborhoods were safe. We cannot afford another 4 years of failed policy. It's time for Republicans to unite around the most Republican in America, most popular Republican in America. She is a high up there. She is currently the chair of the House Republican Conference, the number 3 position in the House GOP. Right? You may not sort of recognize that name, but she is somebody who has a lot of power and sway. She is running for re-election to that post, which could be on a number 4 position if the Republicans win the majority. Trump endorsed Stefanik, said, I think she's fantastic. He offered full-throated support for her. And a lot of people are questioning questioning this. And people are saying that Trump is now sort of encouraging people to support Kevin McCarthy and others in exchange for them supporting him back. There were some questions about Trump and sort of the midterms and whether he was upset about the midterms. This was something that Fox News shared here. It was a clip. Actually, it's not a big clip here. It says the Trump said after the election, There is a fake news narrative that I was furious. It's just the opposite, is what he said. Now, that was a clip that the link is not working, so we'll skip over that. But that, my friends, is Donald Trump. Now, he is suing the January 6th Select Committee. The government is going to respond to that, obviously, and we'll have to cover that when that filing hits. But thank you for liking this video and following us wherever it is you're following us, because when that response comes from the government, we will have it and we will cover it. All right. Now we've got to catch up on this student loan saga before we check back in with the GOP plot to let's do the Biden student loan loss first before we wrap it up with some more politics. We have Biden, who had some bad news on Friday. Biden's student loans giveaway is now reversed, unconstitutional. Of course, his administration will continue to push this forward and find other ways where they can rip off the American people and give it away to their constituents. But for now, it looks like it has been halted. Reuters shared with us, a U.S. judge strikes down the Biden student loan debt relief plan. Here's what they said, written by Nate Damon, says, on November 10th, a federal judge in Texas on Thursday ruled that President Joe Biden's plan to cancel hundreds of billions of dollars in student loans was unlawful and it must be vacated, delivered a victory to conservative opponents of the program. The judge is named Mark Pittman. He's an appointee from Donald Trump out of Fort Worth, Texas. We're going to read through the full opinion. It's short, 26 pages. The debt relief plan had been temporarily blocked by the 8th Circuit Court of Appeals out of St. Louis and others. Big loss for the Biden administration, but very interesting because of the timing. A federal judge orders Biden's student loan program unconstitutional, and very conveniently, this was filed on November 10th, 2022, just a couple days after the midterm. So everybody who went and voted thinking that they were going to be getting a big fat handout from the Biden administration, who went and cast their ballots on November 8th, they all going to wake up with a rude awakening a couple days later when all of that promised government money is no longer available. Here's what the federal judge said, filed out of Fort Worth Division out of Texas. The order is as follows. Federal judge writes, the Constitution vests all legislative powers in Congress. This power, however, can be delegated to the executive branch. But if the executive branch seeks to use that power to create a law of political significance, it must have clear congressional authorization to do so. In this case, the HEROES Act, a law to provide loan assistance to the military, does not provide Biden and his executive branch a clear congressional authorization to create a $400 billion student loan forgiveness program. Thus, the program is an unconstitutional exercise of Congress's power, and it must be vacated. Now, the judge says the court expresses no opinion on the program itself, whether it needs, we need money to be sort of given out or granted or gifted away. They say that's not for us to consider. It's a consideration that's inappropriate for this court. Our job is merely to interpret the law. That's it. They give us some background. They tell us about the Department of Education. They say, they offer two types of grants. A grant, which is sort of a gift, and they offer a loan. Grants don't have to be repaid, but loans do. And previously, when these loans were extended, there have been attempts to reform them. Today, we've got $1.61 trillion in student loan debt, 43 million borrowers. In 2019, Elizabeth Warren wanted to give away $50,000 in student debt. Others wanted to make different offers, and both bills failed in Congress. But the executive branch has recently explored its ability to do it itself. If Congress can't get this stuff passed, maybe Biden can do it on his own. Trump also thought about this, considered its authority under the HEROES Act to forgive student loans under the pandemic. Speaker Pelosi agreed with the department's conclusion that it lacked that authority. Even Speaker Pelosi said, people think that the president of the United States has the power for debt forgiveness. He does not. He can postpone, he can delay, but he does not have the power to just give it. That has to be accomplished through an act of Congress from Pelosi. However, Biden promised to forgive all undergraduate debt from 2- and 4-year colleges for people earning less than $125,000. After becoming president, he instructed the department to prepare a memo exploring how they could possibly do this. The department did so, but changed its tune, concluding now that the HEROES Act does allow, oh my gosh, we read it wrong. We missed that whole chapter in that bill. The COVID Biden chapter. Oh, yeah. So now we have that bill to create loan forgiveness. The next day, the White House announced the president would fulfill his campaign commitment by providing student loan relief to millions of borrowers. They give us some heavy lifting here. The HEROES Act, it does grant the Secretary of Education some power to do certain things as long as it's necessary to ensure objectives are achieved. They have laws that they have to follow. The Secretary of Education, Miguel Cardona, invoked his authority under the HEROES Act, saying that the loans were harmed by COVID. And he granted the permission to do this. Now, people are filing lawsuit. Myra Brown, Alexander Taylor, they both have student loans. This is the judge writing. And they say, we're here with them. They're here. Taylor is ineligible for a full $20,000 in debt relief because she did not get a Pell Grant. Brown loses out on $20,000 of forgiveness. Then they're both losing money. But they couldn't voice their disagreement with the rules because the Biden administration just did this. Now, they're talking about the APA, which is the Administrative Procedure Act. And this is sort of the rules that say how laws are interpreted and implemented. They've got to follow a certain procedure before they just start granting people things or taking things away from people. And in this case, Biden didn't go through this procedure, right? There should be a window where you can ask questions and voice objections before major policy changes. And so the judge is saying here, in this case, these two plaintiffs, they both had student loans. They're not going to get any money back. And Biden just made these changes without following the APA, which says that there has to be a period of time to ask questions. The same day plaintiffs sued, they moved to enjoin this and to stop this from going forward. They tell about the legal standards and about what's appropriate in order for the court to grant them relief. In this case, they say that the defendants didn't have opportunities to be heard. It says that they have standing. Let's see if we can find some good meat and potatoes to this suit. Judicial review. Now, this is where the plaintiffs say the law was violated. The APA, that Administrative Protection Act, says that agencies have to follow substantive rules for notice and comment. Before you just start changing things, you have to give the public an opportunity to be heard. There are substantive requirements. The students say that the secretary lacks the authority to implement these changes, and they're covering different case law for us. There is a lot of technical stuff in this lawsuit that is typically not that interesting. So let's just jump to this conclusion. Federal judge wraps this up for us, says, this case involves the question of whether Congress, through the HEROES Act, gave the Secretary, Miguel Cardona, in the Biden administration, the authority to implement a program that provides debt forgiveness to millions of student loan borrowers. The total around $400 billion, some say much more than that. Now, whether the program constitutes good public policy, the judge says that's not for me to determine. Still, no one can plausibly deny, says the judge, that it is either one of the largest delegations of power to the executive branch or one of the largest exercises of legislative power without congressional authority in the history of the United States. $400 billion. The Biden people are just like, oh, we can, yeah, just forgive it all. Judge says, no. In this country, we are not ruled by an all-powerful executive with a pen and a phone. Instead, Texas judge says we are ruled by a constitution that provides for three distinct and independent branches of government. And as President James Madison warned in Federalist 47, the accumulation of all powers, legislative, executive, and judiciary, in the same hands, whether of one, a few, or many, and whether hereditary, self-appointed, or elective, may justly be pronounced the very definition of tyranny. The court is not blind to the current political division in our country, but it is a fundamental to the survival of our republic that the separation of powers as outlined in our Constitution be preserved. And having interpreted the HEROES Act, this court holds that it does not provide clear congressional authorization for the program proposed by the Secretary. Thus, the student's motion for summary judgment is granted, and the government's motion to dismiss is denied. The court declares unlawful Biden's student loan program, and it is hereby vacated. So ordered this 10th day of November by American hero Judge Mark T. Pittman out of the United States District Court. Amazing. So absolutely true. One branch of government should not be usurping another branch of government. The Biden administration decided on their own that it was appropriate to grant, evidently, $400 billion out of thin air that Congress never contemplated to, evidently, give money to their supporters that they're not ever going to get. Now, as you'll see, this doesn't turn out so well for the students. Thousands of students now going to the federal student aid website, and here's what they see. Welcome to studentaid.gov. Courts have issued orders blocking our student debt relief, and as a result, at this time, we're not accepting applications. Oh, man! We are seeking to overturn those orders. If you've already applied, we'll hold your application. Otherwise, subscribe and check back. We'll post information as soon as further updates are available. Now, obviously, I think they already knew that this was not ever going to pass. It was clearly unconstitutional, but they had some votes that they needed to cram through. And it looks like it may have been successful. After the White House promised millions of student loans, billions going back to evidently students, courts threw it out and the White House responded. Karine Jean-Pierre communicated on November 10th a statement in response to the loss in federal courts. Karine said on behalf of the Biden administration, quote, "We strongly disagree with the district court's ruling on our student debt relief program, and the Department of Justice has filed an appeal. The president and this administration are determined to help working and middle-class Americans get back on their feet by spending a bunch of money we don't have. And while their opponents, backed by extreme Republican special interests, sued to block millions of Americans from getting much-needed relief. For the 26 million borrowers who have already given the Department of Information their information, 16 million people who have already been approved for release, the DOJ will hold on to your information. You're not going to get it. We will never stop fighting for hardworking Americans, no matter how many roadblocks our opponents and special interests try to put in our way." Amazing. So the White House promised people a bunch of ice cream if they behave themselves. They behaved themselves. Now they're not getting their scoops of ice cream. Oh, bummer. Well, that's what the student loan situation looks like. It has been hit from multiple angles, even in a Circuit Court of Appeals, not looking like the student loan program is going to survive. Of course, we'll continue to cover it if anything changes. Thank you for subscribing and following along wherever it is you're watching this. And I look forward to seeing you on the next one. All right. And so we've got one final segment, my friends, before we wrap it up for the day. GOP senators plot against McConnell. Mitch McConnell, some people call him the turtle. Some people call him Cocaine Mitch. He has been in charge of the Republican Party in the Senate for a long time. And a lot of people are asking whether it's time for a change on this. We're going to check in with Senators Marco Rubio, Josh Hawley. We are going to look at some numbers from Blake Masters and his campaign. Chuck Schumer is basically giddy. Kathy Hochul's dancing around New York. And Nancy Pelosi has tears in her eyeballs. We will talk about all of it. But first, let's hear from Marco Rubio. We know that the Senate is going to be picking its next leader soon enough, and we've got a lot of questions about who they may be. Politico reports that top Senate Republicans push forward amid calls to delay leadership elections because people don't want this guy, Mitch McConnell, to take control again. Story written by Burgess Everett. Says Senate leaders are pushing forward with plans to hold leadership elections next week, even as a growing number of Republicans, some of whom we're going to hear from today, demand a delay after an underwhelming performance in the midterms. We've got Ron Johnson from Wisconsin, Mike Lee, Utah, Rick Scott, These are people who are circulating a letter pressing colleagues to sign on to postponement of the elections for the GOP scheduled for Wednesday. The movement signals growing discontent in the party. The letter says, "We were all disappointed that a red wave failed to materialize, and there are multiple reasons it did not. But," the senators say, "we need to have serious discussions within our conference as to why and what we can do to improve our chances in 2024. Now, McConnell seeks to break Senator Mike Mansfield's longest-serving party leader record. Oh, great. Is that what's going on here? We're trying to break records for longest-running incompetent leadership. He's facing fresh questions from at least half a dozen Republicans who are all going to serve in the Senate next year. The Kentuckian has always won the full support of his conference. So we don't know, right? Are the Republicans going to fall in line? Probably. But they are making a lot of noise all around the country. This is Senator Marco Rubio saying he's surprised that Republicans have ever won at all anywhere in America, especially in the current environment where basically they are handicapped everywhere they turn.
But I think we also have to understand something. I mean, literally everything in our society and culture is aligned against Republicans. It's a miracle Republicans win anywhere. Virtually every major television and media outlet in America is against us. All the celebrities, all the movie actors. I mean, you name it. It's just constant. The tech companies, the list goes now. Major American corporations. So it's amazing that Republicans are even competitive, much less winning these seats. And look, I think we're going to win the House. We still have a real chance, and we're going to win Nevada. I think Arizona.
First of all, as Marco was talking about, the media is completely allied against us, as is our education system. Democrats really ramped up their totals with the youth vote. But I think maybe more than anything, Democrats have no problem lying. The president lies. President Obama lies. My opponent lied. And, of course, the media amplifies those same lies, and let's face it, lies taint you. So it's very effective, and we won this campaign, we won this race because I told the truth. But again, those lies, when you have a political party that has no problem lying, where they figure the end justifies the means, unfortunately, that has an impact in politics.
It does. It means that they get to call every single person that they don't like or disagree with an enemy of the country. You can get to say that they are extremists, MAGA insurrectionists. They are people who are domestic violent extremists, domestic homegrown terrorists, whatever it is, right? The same label they've been using for a very long time now, and it is not letting up. In fact, it seems like it's working. And if you take that same label and then you magnify it times the media, times big tech, times every single news agency, every single celebrity, Hollywood films, on and on and on, and they can just come out and say day after day that Republicans are going to kill you. In fact, look, they even almost killed the speaker. Then it really does add up. And people are wondering, like we've wondered here for a long time, where has Mitch McConnell been? Where has he been when the DOJ and the FBI have become weaponized? Not heard really anything from him. When Trump's house was raided, when I haven't even heard anything from him after the midterms. I mean, where has he been? Does anybody really know? I'm not sure. But Hawley is saying that, yeah, it's time for the leadership at the House to sort of come to a reckoning. Josh Hawley said that the GOP leadership is responsible for the bad midterm showing. 2 days after Republicans dramatically underperform, Hawley said, "I've completed my autopsy. It's the party leaders' faults. Top line is it's their responsibility." The Missouri populace, they say, finally had an interview. He called Washington Republicanism the problem, specifically Minority Leader Mitch McConnell. He also thinks it was a bad idea to talk about making changes to things like Social Security and Medicare. Hawley said, Republicans just said, well, the other side sucks and Biden sucks. Well, no doubt, he said. But it's pretty hard to convince folks, particularly independent-minded ones, who don't trust the process to vote for you if you don't have something affirmative to say and offer, which we've been waiting for, right? When I hear stuff like this from guys like we heard from Mayor Suarez in Miami, right? He talked about innovation and he had a three-thing list. I don't remember what they were. Innovation, low taxes, and safe streets. It was like basically those three things. That's great. That's a plan. Where was Mitch McConnell? Where was Lindsey Graham? He was out there talking about eliminating abortion for everybody, right? The messaging was terrible. He says, I say that at the feet of the Washington establishment that set the tone for these races. McConnell said, we'll take back the Senate, whatever. Right? So that's what's going on. Now, you see several senators are unhappy with what they are seeing. And I wanted to show you this little thing I came across. Blake Masters obviously lost here in Arizona. Doesn't look like that is going to change. I wanted to show you what I found from Open Secrets. Open Secrets tracks spending in races. And let me just show you what the difference was between Mark Kelly and Blake Masters here in Arizona. We have Mark Kelly, who won. He raised almost $80 million, and he spent of that $73 million in Arizona. Mark Kelly signs all over the place. Mark Kelly commercials all over the place. Text messages, even though I don't support the Democrats. It was crazy. Small individual contributions, $34 million. Large individual contributions, $42 million. PAC contributions, $1.3 million. Others, $1.1 million. Tons of money. Okay, total almost $80 million. Let's see what Blake Masters did. Oh, okay, so $80 million, $73 million spent. Blake Masters had $9 million. 9 versus 73 million. It's not even close, right? It's like not even in the same league. Of those contributions, 180,000 came from PACs, small donors, 2.4 million, large donors, 7.2 million, other 1 million. Candidate spent himself $1 million of his own money. So, all right, so 9 million versus 73 million. Wow. Now, my understanding is a bunch of that money was sent to other races that Mitch McConnell thought were more, reasonable to win. So you can see how that works, right? The money matters, and Blake Masters had none of it. Huh. Okay. Well, the Democrats are very happy about all of this. Chuck Schumer, of course, is a senator. Schumer was once concerned about the death of American democracy. That was when Republicans were going to win. But since Republicans did not win, democracy is now saved again.
Thank you. I feel good. You know what I feel good about? I feel good for the country. Because so many people worried, I did, about this democracy with all the negativity and all the threats and even some people doing violence. Not the party leaders, but some of the people in the Republican Party didn't seem to condemn it very hard. America showed that we believe in our democracy.
People didn't do what we wanted them to do the way we wanted them to do it, and that was very concerning for me. But now they did the things that we wanted them to do the exact way we wanted them to do it. Everything's pretty good now.
That the roots of democracy are deep and strong, and it will prevail as long as we fight for it.
And you keep voting Democrat. Yeah.
Well, I hope I always tried in the last Senate. The majority of the important bills we passed were bipartisan. The BIF bill, the largest infrastructure bill that's ever happened. The bill that helped our veterans with the burn pits, the gun control bill, and maybe most important, the CHIPS bill, which is going to create millions of good-paying jobs here in America and bring the chip industry, so important to the future of our economy, back to America. So we did a lot of things bipartisan, but when we couldn't get things done on bipartisanship, such as things like climate change, such as things like going after the prescription drug companies so we could lower costs, we did it on our own. So my first choice is always to do it bipartisan. But on issues that really matter to the American people, and when the Republicans aren't being bipartisan, won't be bipartisan, we try to do it on our own.
Yeah, so it's all the Republicans' fault, and if you don't do what they say, then you might be insurrecting American democracy. But if you do what they say, everything is pretty much okay, and America will survive. Nancy Pelosi is asked about whether the attack on her husband was instrumental in the Democratic victory. Of course, the Democrats have been talking a lot about Republican extremists. Very convenient that a Republican extremist attacked the speaker or the speaker's husband in the days leading right up to an election. Is it convenient that it worked out so well?
You alluded to this when I asked about your husband, but I just want to ask specifically and kind of point blank about the fact that there has been such extremism, such political violence, and what happened to your husband was horrific. Do you think that that had an impact on voters as they cast their ballots?
I don't. I know that what people tell me, that's anecdotal.
Hasn't been paying any attention to it, yeah.
We always say the plural of anecdote is not data necessarily, but it is a trend in what I'm hearing. But it wasn't just the attack. It was the Republican reaction to it.
Oh, yeah. So, yes, her husband got cracked in the head with a hammer. That was bad. I mean, it was sort of a big thing. He almost died, and all this stuff. But the real tragedy here, America, how the Republicans responded to the hammer cracking my husband's skull.
Which was disgraceful. And that, I think, really, the attack is horrible. Imagine how I feel as the one who was the target and my husband paying the price and the traumatic effect on our family. But that trauma is intensified by the ridiculous, disrespectful attitude that the Republicans, and there's nobody disassociating themselves from the horrible response that they gave to it.
What
do you think
that turned
further into that?
That turned voters off?
They tell me so.
Yeah, well, that's why we planned it. Obviously, that's why we set the whole thing up, is to turn voters off, and it worked. Evidently, a lot of people were waking up on election day, like, fearing hammer attacks or something.
You alluded to this.
They voted for Democrats in raging, massive numbers. So evidently, it worked. And Speaker Pelosi is making her way through a very difficult tragedy in a difficult time. In New York, fresh off an election victory, Governor Hochul is dancing around with a bunch of students in masks. They've got to be masked up. She doesn't because she won. Mask those kids up. Tighten them up. Hey, this kid, arrest this kid. Arrest his kid. Look, he's got a finger in his nose and his mask is down. Illegal. Arrest this young gal. These kids over here, they don't have any masks on either. Arrest them. All right, so that's Governor Hochul, who is still going on with the double standards, very celebratory, victorious, having been reelected by the people of New York, who are okay with scenes like that as their children are shoved in bubble wrap. All right, but that is the GOP, who is plotting against McConnell. We'll see if anything comes of it. We will, of course, continue to cover it. Thank you for joining us, as we do wherever it is you are watching this, my friends. And that is it for the show. We covered some serious stuff today. We covered Biden student loans, Trump suing the J6 committee. We hit an Arizona update, and we have a little bit of time for your questions and comments. I saw some super chats come in. And so, well, before we jump over to locals for our after party, let's see what some of you have to say about all of this and more. As I pull up the super chats, I saw Zulu sent in a super chat, and there were some others that I missed from the start of the program because they come flying by my screen. So I have to pull them up in a different location. But thank you for them. Let's see what we had at the start of the program today. We had that from Ronnie Cole. Says, I hear Maricopa lost count. We're going to start over. Is that true? Maybe it would go faster if we did it again. I don't know, Ronnie. We might get results here tonight. We'll see. But thanks for the super chat. Kareem says, it would not surprise me if the House also remains under Democrat control at this point. It might just take a few more weeks. Yeah, just keep going. Yeah, just keep going and going and going. And then eventually you get the outcome that you want. Lean says, Rob, I'm sick of all this. I understand you, Lean. Here, Lean just put that one up on the screen. Look, we'll get out of politics soon enough. We're starting to transition a little bit, as you can see. But I hear ya. That came in from Kareem. Fraser McBurney says, with all these broken tabulator machines over 20, says the election should be redone with a paper ballot. But that's a quote, so I'm not sure who you're quoting there, Fraser. Well, I used a paper ballot. I'm not sure if there were other ballots anywhere else. In Arizona, we used paper ballots. I'm not sure what you used elsewhere. But we had to actually, they printed it out and then you filled it out and then submitted it back. So we have a record here. But thank you for the super chat. General Kale says, politics should be like working with explosives for a living. You mess it up and you don't get a second chance. Yeah, you get one shot. A lot of people would ride off into the sunset, right? And I'm not sure who you're talking about there, General Kale, but that could apply to a lot of people. Thanks for the dono. Mike, the dad Crosby says, ID at the poll takes longer to vote, not count. Yeah, so that's an interesting thing, right? Mike, the dad Crosby. When I went in, I showed them my ID. I got my thing, my ballot. I printed it out, signature verified. I am who I said I was, ID verified. Then all of this goes into the machine and it should just tally it, right? It's all done. In other words, when I showed up at the poll, it was done. Everything was done. Signature, vote, tabulation, done. This election, the sort of the early ballot stuff is the stuff that takes forever and ever and ever. Yeah, it takes longer to vote, not to count. Bear says, I found that Nancy Pelosi, she was drunk counting votes in Arizona with a glass of wine. Might explain some of the results. Zulu said, are people upset? I think we got that one. Asking about how, how exactly does stuff, how does taking longer introduce variables that are problematic? And I think we covered that one pretty at length. But thank you, Zulu. I saw another one come in. Kifa says, please tell listeners to check their ballot in Arizona that it was counted. Yeah, and we did. We did that at the start of the program. One more time we can do that. Go to karilake.com/cure if you want to check that out, because apparently it's going to be that close. So thank you to Kifa. Says the Democrats have buses picking people up to cure. We're behind. I'm sure they do, man. The Democrats' ground game is way better than the Republicans. And I think that's why, if the Republicans want to be a serious party, they're going to have to figure that out. I bet it, man. The Democrats are probably showing up with, cheeseburgers and cans of beer. Hey, come out and vote. Let's go. Get on the bus. Let's go. And the Republicans are, I don't know what they're doing. Bruce says ballot harvesters are people too. Stop the hammer crime now. That's right. They are people. No hammer time, no hammer crime. From Bruce Rice. Thank you, Bruce. The turtle must go came in from Selv. He's been in there for a long, long time. People are getting pretty tired of it. Thank you, Selv. We had this one come in from Zulu. Says your breakdown of the congressional committee was my favorite piece in a while. Thanks for getting back to straight analysis. Well, thanks, Zulu. Yeah, I'm sort of feeling it too. I'm sort of politicked out a little bit. The elections are a lot, and there's a lot of other good legal analysis to get back into, and I'm looking forward to that. But this is part of the process. Like there has to be an off ramp. We're going to close out the elections, and then honestly, we'll get right back into some election, and then there's going to be a lot of other, heavy lifting legal stuff to get into. And I agree. That was a fun segment. It was a good lawsuit. It was a fun one to read. And I'm looking forward to more of that. Lately it's just the news has been a lot of just politics. And it'll be fun for some of that noise to evaporate. But thanks, Zulu. That's 2 from you today. I appreciate both of those. And I'm glad that you're here. And I know that sometimes, some people want only politics. Some people want only law. Some people don't want either things. And, we're ebbing and flowing. And I appreciate your feedback. I do listen to it and I do incorporate it all. So let's see what else we've got. Now, gosh, what should we do? Do we think that we're going to get results at 6 o'clock? Because if we are, it's like 5 minutes away. Then we should just hang out if we think we're going to get some results at 6 o'clock. Let's actually go find out and see. We'll just check in with Garrett Archer and Bloomberg. Yeah, Lean says, I love politics, to be honest, but I'm sick of the drama. Yeah, there's a lot of drama going on. I'm not really interested, to be honest, in the Republican versus Republican let's murder each other stuff. I'm not interested in it. Right? If Ron DeSantis wins, he's going to need the Trumpers. If Trump wins, he's going to need the DeSantisers. Everybody's going to be needed to get things course corrected. And the idea that everybody's just out there like jumping on and killing each other is is not, it's not good. And I don't want to be a part of it. I think it's the Democrats' strategy. I think that like they love that. They're thrilled about, oh, perfect. They're killing each other over there. That's great. And there's a bunch of people who are just thrilled to do it, to just jump in on the dog pile. And I'm not into that right now. Don't know about you guys, but all right. So my friends, we're doing a refresh over here on the screens. And here's what I've got from Bloomberg. And it's looking like they're still showing 93% of the vote as of 12 minutes ago. Hobbs is leading 29,000 votes. And it looks like that just came in as of 12 minutes ago. So may not look like a good day. Let's do a refresh over here from the Data Guru. Says, typo on my tweet, 11,000 in the county is 97% complete out of Pima County. Pima, another one came in, 58 for Kari Lake. I'm sorry. Those are all out of Pima. Apache County, Yuma County, they're all reporting in. We're waiting to hear from Maricopa. And Terry is saying that Lake must win Maricopa in the next batch by 68-32. Oh, that's in Pima. No, in Maricopa. Okay, so these are just some prognostications. This is the difference between governor and president listed here. So I don't really know what is what. But it shows you the colors of the various precincts here. And I can't tell which one's which. So presumably, governor is on the left, president on the right. Okay. Other people in a war room. All right, so we've just got a couple minutes left. They're supposed to drop at 6 o'clock. We're going to go check in on the county elections website as well to see what else we have out there. And let me make sure I didn't miss anything anywhere else while we're here. Let's see what's going on over on Rumble. Shout outs to Cat Crap Fevers over there. Sedona Rocks. Donkish. Annie, get your guns over there. Isle Paint. Jam and Saw as well. Hello, all my Rumble friends. Talking about Katie Hobbs, who has not even ever debated or really made many public appearances in the state of Arizona, how she could win in this state, it's pretty shocking. But that may be the case. So Stephen Richer deleted his tweet on that. Wow. So this is the site you can go to karilake.com cure. And while we're waiting for this, why don't I just show you what that looks like? Here is the website from Kari Lake. Now, what's so fun about this is that when you go here, it will tell you to check your ballot, right? And so you can go and check your ballot, and you can just go over to Maricopa County and check it, like check your status. Now, when you go over to like the elections department, and well, where was I? Well, I was submitting all my stuff, and you see stuff, you've got all these people who are involved in counting, like Katie Hobbs. Her name was on the list when I checked my ballot. It's very interesting. Anything says no shout out for me? Anything? Sorry, I missed you. All right, and so we're waiting for the 6 o'clock hour. It just struck. The hour just struck. We're going to do a refresh over here and see if we have any new updates from Garrett. Or if... Oh, man! He says Maricopa is not incoming at 6 o'clock on the dot. Patience is a virtue. Oh, man! And we know how that goes. So, it could be like 8 o'clock. Which is not fun. So... we'll see what those numbers look like. I don't expect them to be all that good. But let's check out. I'm going to check a couple other places before we wrap it up, and jump on over to the locals after party. I saw a super come in from Eddie. He said, "Is he blaming me this time?" Hey, yeah, he is. Hey, Rob, did you get those votes counted yet? Yeah, I mean, Eddie, I was counting like all of them, all weekend long. I'm tired. It's been like months now. I know. Months. Again, you being an Arizona resident, I hold you personally accountable. Stop being a scrub, Rob, and get in there and help them count the votes. Hashtag Texas rules. Texas can count your votes, I guess, a lot faster than we can. We're just sitting here. I don't know how much help I can be. You've seen me do some math on this show, Eddie. Eddie, you've been around here for a long time here. You don't want to put me in charge of numbers and spreadsheets or anything. It'd be a long process, but the results would be better. If they're gonna, if they're gonna go in there, kind of count things the way they want to count them, I can count things the way I want to count them too. I suppose we can all come up with our own justifications. Hey, shout out to Rainy H, who's over on Facebook. Shout out to Rainy, who's watching from Facebook. We do have a Facebook audience now that we're connecting with as well. I see Rainy's over there chatting on Facebook. All right, and so I don't know that we're going to get any interesting election news here today because there's just a delay. Here's what we've got so far. Arizona Central is saying, here's a county by county breakdown of the race so far. Estimated votes counting. This was as a few hours ago. So Apache, very small county. Coconino, small. Maricopa's at 94%. So we've got 6% of the votes in. Pima, it's very liberal. It's going to go for the left. Santa Cruz. Yeah, so it's going to be tough. I'm not sure that this new drop is going to close the gap. Let's check back in with Bloomberg and see what the total vote is. But 30,000 votes is the margin as it stands, with about 7% remaining. So they've got to close that gap. 30,000 votes. It's going to be tight. But all right, my friends. So we are going to leave it there, and we'll wait for those results to drop. If something happens and there's a major reversal of fortune, maybe we'll come back. But we are going to go back and do our after party at our amazing community called watchingthewatchers.locals.com. We've got about 20, 30 minutes to go through some comments over there. And if you want to join us, it's over at watchingthewatchers.locals.com. Come check it out. JC the Music Man, Uncle Shane, John Allen, a bunch of lurkers over there, which we're going to call out in a minute. But come check us out over there, watchingthewatchers.locals.com, my friends. Otherwise, I want to thank our sponsors. Shout out to Goldco, 4 Patriots, and of course, the R&R Law Group, my law firm, amazing law firm in Scottsdale, Arizona. We help good people charged with crimes find safety, clarity, and hope. 480-787-0394. If you happen to know anybody in the state of Arizona charged with the crime, that's what we do. Appreciate you keeping your antenna open, scanning for people that we can help, sending them our way online, rrlawaz.com. And of course, check out the other sponsors. The links down in the description below. Goldco, robertlikesgold.com. Go to 4patriots.com. Don't starve to death. Get some survival food. Use promo code Robert at checkout. Thank you to the mods who mod down the fort for us. I think Vianticus has game day on Monday. It's like, V. But he wins. He's victorious. He reports back. And shout outs to K-Bean, Just Cause, Lean in the house, who's hanging in there. We love you, Lean. Playing Hooky. Shout out. I see Playing Hooky says go to the wild side. Ronnie Cole's in the house. Zulu, very generous with those super chats. Thank you today, my friend. And I'm glad you're enjoying some of the return to form. We had a super chat come in from Eddie. He says, Charlie Kirk said if Lake doesn't get 65% of this new drop, it's game over. Yeah, that would be a big disappointment. By the way, check your text for my pick with Greg Abbott. You're kidding me. Oh, well, I don't see it yet, Eddie. All right. Well, I was maybe going to put it up on the show, but then I thought, well, maybe you don't want your picture on the show. But thank you for that, Eddie. Yeah, it would be a big disappointment. I think it's probably going to be a big disappointment. Not good. Total bummer. but it is what it is. And boy, oh boy, as we talked about on our morning walk and talk today, it's going to be a lot of time for reflection and I think building some anti-fragility and resilience into our lives. And we're going to see what that looks like very soon. But thank you to the mods, Ronnie Cole, shout out to Zulu, Gio, and Henry, who stop by from time to time. And that, my friends, is it for the program on the day. I want to thank everybody who was a part of the show, who joined in to make it what it is. We're going to leave it right there. I hope to see you right back here tomorrow to do it all again, so that together with your help, we can shine that big, beautiful spotlight of accountability and transparency down upon our system with the hope of finding justice. Have a great night, my friends. I'll see you right back here tomorrow. Bye-bye.